Hello and welcome to Dining with Death. This episode is on our playlist, Dining with the Departed, where we discuss people who are famous or infamous, their lives, what they're famous for, and we eat their favorite food. I'm Stacey Lee. Let's begin. Friends, we are going to discuss in this episode mental health issues and people who choose to end their own lives. So if that is a sensitive subject for you, I would suggest not watching this video. Christopher John Cornell was born on July 20th, 1964 in Seattle, Washington, to Edward F. Boyle, a pharmacist, and Karen Cornell, an accountant. His parents divorced when he was a teenager, and his mother began using her maiden name as the family surname. He performed for the first time in elementary school, singing the 1960s anti-war song, One Tin Soldier. He was pulled out of Catholic high school because his mother felt that he was about to be expelled for asking too many questions. He loved listening to the Beatles and Little Richard. He's a self-described loner, and he used music to deal with his anxiety. He began using alcohol, marijuana, LSD, mushrooms, and prescription drugs in his early teens. He stopped late in his 13th year, but relapsed at 15 for another year. He claimed a bad PCP trip caused him to suffer from panic disorder and agoraphobia throughout his life. He had taken piano and guitar lessons as a child and began becoming more interested in playing rock music at around age 16. He was first in a cover band in 1980 called the Shemps, which is where he met bassist Hiro Yamamoto. Hiro left the band, and after the Shemps broke up, Chris and Hiro started jamming together, and then they brought in Kim Thale, who had also played with them in the Shemps. In 1984, they formed Soundgarden. Soundgarden is in my top 10 rock bands of all time. I absolutely love them. I think their music is genius. I think Chris Cornell is a rock god. And very early on when I met my husband, we bonded over the fact that we both loved them so much. So they hold a special place in my heart. Soundgarden got signed in 1987 after independently releasing a few singles. In 1990, they were nominated for a Grammy for Best Metal Performance for their work, Ultra Mega OK. They released Louder Than Love in 1989, and then Yamamoto left the band to finish his master's degree in physical chemistry at Western Washington University. The band replaced him with former Nirvana guitarist Jason Everman. The band fired Jason and then replaced him with Ben Shepherd. In 1990, Chris Cornell married his longtime girlfriend, Susan Silver, who was the manager for Alice in Chains, Soundgarden, and Screaming Trees. Early in the 1990s, the grunge movement took hold and soon took over the world. So I have to stop for a second and tell one of my favorite music industry stories. Bret Michaels from Poison. He tells a story about how, they were on top of the world and, it was the big hair and the machismo and the strutting around stage in skin-tight pants and all of that, the makeup. And they had a meeting with their record label to renegotiate a deal. So they go to the record label building and they get on the elevator. They go up to the elevator and the doors open. And there along the wall where they keep all of the big photos of the megastars, their photos had been taken down and replaced with photos of Kurt Cobain and Pearl Jam and Soundgarden. He said, we just kind of stopped in the lobby, and there were these photos of these guys that were wearing their grandmother's cardigans, and they had greasy, unkept hair, and they looked kind of sad and kind of depressed, and it was everything the exact opposite of what we were. And at that moment, we knew our career was over. Isn't that a great story? Anyway, I just had to throw that in. The music industry has changed somewhat in that things aren't so in and then so out. Seems like it's a little more fluid and lots of different genres and lots of different sounds can live together now. But back then it was like something was cool and then something was not cool. That same thing. It was in and then it was out. Grunge music took over the world, and Chris Cornell was the undisputed king of the vocalists then, and some say now. His voice. How do you describe something so incredible? I'm a professional singer. I've spent decades on the road touring. I've spent, I don't know how many thousands of hours in recording studios, and I know some really good singers. I don't think I've ever heard anyone with a voice like Chris Cornell. His voice stands alone. I wish I could play some of it for you, but you know, the rules here, I can't use anything of his. His voice was so pure and so clear and so versatile. He had incredible vocal range. He could sing low and gravelly, he could sound sweet as honey, and he could hit those high notes like no one else. And it doesn't hurt that he's like stunningly beautiful. I mean, yeah, he's my kind of guy. While still working with Soundgarden, Chris recorded an album with the members of what would become Pearl Jam. The group used the name Temple of the Dog, and they released a self-titled album in 1991. Chris and Eddie Vedder of Pearl Jam loved to sing together and remained great friends throughout Chris's life. Later on, Chris would sometimes pop up at Pearl Jam concerts and sing with his friend on stage. In 1994, Soundgarden released Super Unknown. I know I've already fawned over this man enough, but Super Unknown, can we just have a moment? That album, I can't even begin to count the hours I've spent listening to that album. Super Unknown is a masterpiece. Rock music just doesn't get any better than Super Unknown. And of course, its mega hit, Black Hole Sun. Black Hole Sun has been the personalized ringtone on my phone for my husband for over 20 years. And can we talk about the music video for a minute? I think when a lot of us think about the 90s, this is one of the things that really sticks out in our memories. This video and the warped faces set to this song, it was just 90s grunge perfection. Cornell's voice was so emotive and so poignant. Super Unknown also had Spoon Man and Fell on Black Days and The Day I Tried to Live and Let Me Drown, and anyway, it's a fantastic album that I listen to on repeat. Soundgarden toured and played and wrote and really wore themselves out on the success of Super Unknown. Unfortunately, this was also the era of heroin, and that became a major part of the band's story. In 1996, the band released Down on the Upside that featured the amazing songs Pretty Noose, Burden in My Hand, and Blow Up the Outside World. David Brown, who's a music critic, said, "Few bands since Led Zeppelin have so crisply mixed instruments, both acoustic and electric. They are fantastic musicians. Mix that with one of the best voices in rock history. That was Soundgarden." The band began experiencing some tension at this point. Even though Pretty Noose received another Grammy nomination, Soundgarden announced it was breaking up on April 9, 1997. Chris Cornell then embarked on a solo career from 1998 to 2001, releasing his album Euphoria Morning. The album was commercially unsuccessful, selling less than 500,000 copies, but Cornell's voice could never be denied, and he was nominated for Best Male Rock Vocal Performance for Can't Change Me at the 2000 Grammy Awards. Also in 2000, Chris and Susan had a daughter, Lillian Jean, born in June. During this time, Cornell also toured with Aerosmith as its opening act. In 2001, Zach De La Rocha left Rage Against the Machine, and producer Rick Rubin suggested the band approach Chris Cornell to replace Zach. Instead of a replacement, a whole new project was created, Audioslave. This, again, such great work here, such fantastic musicians. Tom Morello talks about the first time they got together. He said, "Chris stepped to the microphone and sang the song, and I couldn't believe it. It didn't just sound good. It didn't just sound great. It sounded transcendent. When there is an irreplaceable chemistry from that first moment, you can't deny it." Transcendent. That is a great word to describe Chris Cornell's voice, as well as other things. In November of 2002, Audioslave released its self-titled album, which featured the massive hits Cochise, Like a Stone, and Show Me How to Live. I cannot count the number of times I have played both of those songs in a big cover band that I was in. I can sing, okay? I'm not a great guitar player, but I was always the acoustic guitar player in our bands, and that acoustic riff in Like a Stone, that thing kept me up I don't know how many nights, but I did finally nail it. It was never fantastic, but I did get it finally. Unfortunately, during the time of Audioslave, Cornell's struggles with alcohol and drugs became publicly obvious, and he entered rehab. He and his wife separated and then divorced in 2004, but Chris quickly remarried to Vicky Karayanis, a Paris publicist, and they had a daughter, Tony, in September of 2004, and then a son, Christopher Nicholas, in December of 2005. The couple also founded the Chris and Vicki Cornell Foundation, which works to aid the homeless, the poor, and abused or neglected children. Audioslave recorded and toured through 2007, releasing Out of Exile in 2005 and Revelations in 2006. After this and a lot of struggle with sobriety, Chris announced he was leaving the band to continue his solo work, blaming personality conflicts and musical differences. In 2008, Chris started playing with Linkin Park on their tour, and he would often join the band during their set and sing harmonies for Chester Bennington. In 2007, he released his second solo album, Carry On. It debuted at number 17 on the American Billboard charts. In 2009, he worked with Timbaland to produce the album Scream. The critics didn't love this album, but Timbaland has gone on record saying, "It's the best work I've done in my career." In 2010, fans were ecstatic to hear that Soundgarden would reunite. The band released some vinyl singles and then Telephantasm, a retrospective. The band also became one of the most popular featured in the video game Guitar Hero. They began touring again in 2011 and continued releasing new work. The band played together through 2016 and had written several new songs for an album. Chris continued his work as a solo artist even after Soundgarden reunited. In 2011, he released an acoustic live album called Songbook, on which he performed songs from Soundgarden, Audioslave, Temple of the Dog, as well as Led Zeppelin's Thank You and Lennon's Imagine. This album was well received, even by critics, and it did so well in Europe that Chris headlined a tour there in 2012 and 2013. He also played Obama's inaugural ball in 2013. His last studio album, Higher Truth, was released in 2015. He donated all the proceeds from the song The Promise to refugees and vulnerable children in Armenia as a way of remembering the Armenian genocide. Early in Chris's life, he had worked as a fish handler in Seattle and then as a sous chef in a seafood restaurant called Ray's Boathouse. And when he married his second wife, Vicki, he began spending a lot of time in Paris, her native country. He always had love of good food and of cooking and decided to turn that love into a new venture. In 2006, at age 41, Chris, his wife Vicki, and her brother Nicholas, who is also known as DJ Nick Blast in Europe, opened Black Calavados in a bustling area of Paris just across from the Four Seasons Hotel and about 5 blocks from the Champs-Élysées. The restaurant was very European, but also featured rock music and had no dress code. It featured a new American menu with items like caramelized quail and truffle mac and cheese, along with really unique dishes like peanut butter sole. During this same time, Chris also became the face of designer label John Varvatos, with whom he was friends. Chris was 6'3", slender, and beautiful, so he was a perfect match for the label. This seemed to be a really happy time in Chris's life. He was back playing with Soundgarden and having success at that, but his struggles with crippling depression were never far away from him. He once said, "You'll think someone has run-of-the-mill depression, and then the next thing you know, they're hanging from a rope. It's hard to tell the difference." Those words would become very, very haunting later on. After decades of musical success, family life, and struggles with depression and substance abuse, the world awoke to the tragic news that we had lost a legend. Around 12:15 a.m. on May 18, 2017, Chris Cornell's bodyguard found him unconscious in the bathroom of his hotel room at the MGM Grand in Detroit, Michigan, just after performing a show with Soundgarden at the Fox Theater. He was lying on the floor with an exercise band around his neck and blood in his mouth. Fire and rescue was called, but they were unable to revive him. Chris Cornell was pronounced dead at 1:30 a.m. at the age of 52. The cause of death was officially ruled suicide by hanging. Foul play was ruled out by surveillance, which showed no one had entered or left Chris's hotel room. A toxicology report was done, but there was nothing in Chris's system other than therapeutic levels of his prescription medications taken for headaches, anxiety, and congestion. Chris's wife, Vicky, is convinced that Chris did not take his own life and blames his death on the overuse of Ativan, stating that she spoke to him after the show and he was slurring his words. She believes that after many years of sobriety, something triggered Chris, who then took too many Ativan and then took his own life. The Seattle Space Needle went dark, the Seattle Mariners held a pre-game tribute, and the world mourned. On May 23, 2017, Chris Cornell was cremated. His funeral was held on May 26th at the Hollywood Forever Cemetery in Los Angeles. His bandmates were in attendance. If you are struggling with depression or substance abuse, there is help. You can call 1-800-662-HELP at any time and find someone to talk to. Please reach out if you're struggling. We all want what's best for you. Chris Cornell loved fresh seafood. He loved fish, he loved shellfish, and he loved oysters on the half shell. So right now, in honor of Chris Cornell, we are going to sample some of his favorite foods as we go dining with death. Here is this fantastic seafood platter. It's been a little bit of a story getting it. Obviously, I look a little different than I did in the segment before this. And that's because even though we normally film these two parts together, I went to get the seafood out of the fridge and part of it was spoiled. I live in the middle of the desert. It's not a seafood town. Las Vegas is in the middle of the desert, but this ain't Las Vegas. So I have returned with fresh seafood and we're gonna taste it. Let's start with these beautiful little oysters, which apparently were Chris Cornell's favorite. I prefer a cold water oyster. They're a lot creamier to me, the texture is smoother, and I just like the taste better. These are from Vancouver. Wow, nothing better than a fresh oyster. Those are absolutely delicious. If I lived in a seafood town, this would be my daily meal. They're just so delicate and so briny. They taste of fresh ocean water. They just make me want to go to the beach. I've got some beautiful fresh shrimp here. A little cocktail sauce. And my favorite, the crab meat. I could live on crab meat. Crab is so rich and so decadent. And then, of course, when you dip it in melted butter, it becomes even more so. But it's also good cold like this. Maybe just a hint of spicy cocktail sauce. Yeah. Just a gorgeous little seafood platter. I can see why Chris Cornell loved it. I can understand why people love seafood so much. And for a lot of people, it's kind of more of an adventure. It's a little bit of a treat. It's something we don't eat every day. So, it's special. Thank you for joining me today on Dining with Death, Dining with the Departed. Please like and subscribe if you'd like to see more. Stay safe and be kind to each other. And I'll see you next time on Dining with Death. Bye.